Hi, welcome. I'm so happy to be here on my first ever live workshop. I'm very new to technology, so I'm hoping everyone can see me. And I just wanted to give a caveat that says if we have technical glitches along the way, I may be the very first person that you get to practice your forgiveness work on. So I'm super excited to have you here. I'm hoping to give a couple more minutes for the rest of you all to log on. It's noon in sunny San Diego, and we're thinking about our friends up the way who are experiencing fires today. And I'm hoping it's Friday and you all have lots of things that are fun happening for you this weekend. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time to be with me today. I also would like to encourage you for a minute to take out a journal and maybe a pen so that you can write down anything that's of interest to you, anything that you would like to remember. So I guess with that, I think I've got that covered, and I think we'll get started. I have to make sure that I'm doing everything appropriately. Okay. Okay, here we go. So, welcome. If you're here to learn about going from grief to joy and to learn some proven strategies to overcome grief and return to purpose, you are in the very right place. I hope everyone is here, and if you're arriving late, thank you so much for taking your time to be with me. And I'm pretty confident you're going to get lots of good stuff out of this, and I look forward to hearing your feedback. So thanks for coming, and I'm hoping this takes about 30 to 45 minutes. And again, appreciate you taking notes and sharing with me what comes up for you. So who am I? I'm Molly Biehl, and here are some pictures sort of representing my life. First off, I'm a mother of 3 teenagers, and I have a son that recently graduated from high school and has ventured into the college realm, and I'm super excited for him. I live in San Diego, obviously, and love living by the beach. I exercise quite a bit with my dog. We like walking on the trails around our community. I have an undergraduate degree in political science from UC Santa Barbara. Go Gauchos. And I attended the University of New Orleans, where I got my master's degree in sociology. This year, I've started a company. It's called A Triumphant Me, and I'm very, very excited about this. I'm really working hard to use my story to encourage other people to share their stories so that we can all learn from one another and be our best selves. I wrote a book this year, and it came out in February. It's called You've Got This, and it just is part of my journey and literally what I did to kind of overcome some of my challenges in my life and to really go from grief to thriving. And then interestingly, coming out this month is a book called 200 Women. And I have the great privilege of being in that book. I'm among some pretty amazing women who are known and amazing women who are unknown. Some might recognize my mom, Pam, Maria Shriver, Alfre Woodard, and others. So I'm really excited to be a part of that book. It will have a talking circle conversation. It's women around the world, and it will be out in bookstores near you. So why am I doing this? Why am I talking ad nauseum about forgiveness? First off, I have a goal to play out loud, and I really want to start working in an area that I'm passionate about. Second, I really like that my kids are watching me being vulnerable and taking risks by sharing my personal experiences in hopes of positively impacting the world. That's super important to me. Third, I have a strong sense that I can impact thousands of people with my hopeful message because I'm certain I'm not alone in wanting peace of mind and freedom from the pain of past hurts. I think the world could look a lot different if people could work to open their hearts to the possibilities of forgiveness rather than ruminating in shame, blame, helplessness, or anger. And I also want to tell you, I'm not a certified therapist and I can't advise on such a level. I can share my experiences, what I've learned through a lot of research and the things that have worked for me. So I want you to know what to expect from the time with me today. I'd like you to consider a different way of thinking about a situation that's causing you grief right now. I'm assuming you're on with me today because something is nagging at you and you want to make it different. I want you to be inspired to take action to free yourself from some of the pain of your past that you're holding on today. And then maybe I would like you to be challenged to be willing to forgive even yourself. So grief. It's very real, and I wrote a chapter in my book about it because I don't think it should be diminished. Grief is something that obviously creates a great deal of pain. We can feel super isolated when we're in grief. We can be depressed. We can feel heavy, and it can feel very burdensome. For me, grief is sighing all the time. Grief is maybe feeling guilty when I'm not remembering my late loved ones on a regular basis. And grief is, not being present sometimes when you're in a situation with family and friends because you're off thinking about your struggles. It's very real, and I just acknowledge that we all experience it and it should be talked about. But then there's the promise of joy. This is my joy. And even though we can't always remember what joy feels like in our moments of grief, we know we've had them. We know we've had countless moments of joy because we wouldn't be grieving if we hadn't. So sometimes we just can't find our way back to that space. And I'm convinced that we can all experience relief from the painful parts of our lives, although they somehow seem to seep into the other parts of our lives where we don't want them to be. I believe that forgiveness is the key to be able to doing this. So, for me, joy equals forgiveness. I've come to be reacquainted with joy through my forgiveness, and I want you to have the same experience as me. I'm guessing perhaps you would like that too. For me, during the challenges in my life, some expected and some rather unlikely, I found myself waffling around in this space of just confusion. And I was in this reactionary type of mode. And I was actually really proud that I was resilient and strong. But over time, I decided that resilience didn't actually equate to happiness. And that survival mode, it didn't really mean that I was truly living. So I don't know if this resonates with anybody out here. If you're a man, it may not, but this is me. This is me before my forgiveness work, and this is me after my forgiveness work. First picture, seemingly together on the outside, professional, poised, hopefully, most of the time, but inside, quite distracted, often disappointed. Things weren't the way they should have been. And I was always sort of waiting for the next shoe to drop. So then there's the after. This is how I like to think of myself today. I am calm. I am present much more often than I used to be. I'm super curious and excited about my future. I feel very purposeful, and I am fun, and I'm feeling very empowered. So what is forgiveness? There's so many definitions out there, and I chose this one today because I think you can remember it And I think it's going to help you apply forgiveness sort of to your daily actions. And so Fred Luskin, who's a director of Stanford University Forgiveness Projects, and he has many other jobs and qualifications, he, after lots of years of work in the field, came up with this simple definition, and I absolutely love it. It's the ability to make peace with the word no. How cool is that? It simplifies things a lot, and what it reminds me of is that I have a choice. I can sit there and dwell in all of the no's that I get in life, or I can make peace with them and maybe create some yeses. I'm sure you all have tons of no's stories that you have, but like for me, for example, today, I wanted to feel fabulous and energized and perfectly healthy before I was presenting to you all. And I have a tickle and a cough and a cold. I wanted yes, I got no. And then the bigger ones, you know, I wanted to be married for 50 years, to be honest. I envisioned having a 50-year wedding anniversary party. All my friends were going to be there. I was going to sit with my husband and reflect about all our trials, but how we made it through, and it was going to be awesome. Well, come to find out, I'm no longer married, and unless I hurry and live to be a very long time, I will not be married for 50 years. I wanted yes, I got no. I wanted my dad to be around when my kids were growing up. I wanted him to be a role model for them. Well, my dad is no longer here. I wanted yes, I got no. And then I wanted my sister to be around when we were adults, and I wanted to raise my kids with her. Unfortunately, my sister is no longer around. Again, wanted yes, got no. I think you get the picture, and I'm hoping right now you're thinking of the no's in your life that you might want to make into yeses. So why is forgiveness important? Well, first off, it's because it gives you power. And I know that might sound weird, but there is great power in forgiveness. And if you don't believe me, you can believe the Dalai Lama. He says compassion, forgiveness. These are the real ultimate source of power for peace and success in life. Is it worth the work, you might ask? Because I'm not going to lie, it's work. I say yes to that. Here's why. I've had the good fortune of being in the company of Nelson Mandela and actually studying him and watching his example for quite a long time. And in his example of forgiveness, I sort of extracted these lessons. The first was intention. You need to have intent to forgive. And the second one was practicality and strategy. Nelson Mandela knew very well what the outcomes and the possibilities would be if he could bring himself to forgive his captors and he could forward an entire nation. He had grace. I love grace. And he exuded that, and I would like to emulate that. And then he had humor. And I think it's so important that we remember while we're dealing with lots of difficult situations, illness, what have you, it's okay to laugh. Here's another guy. This is Desmond Tutu. He's standing next to me, the Jolly Green Giant, and my mom, Linda Biehl, and that is his wife, Leah Tutu. This guy is amazing, and he is the ultimate example in forgiveness. And in being with him and in studying his work, and he's written so much about it, I have learned joy. The guy exudes joy, and it's impossible not to catch it when you're around him. The second thing that I love about him and that he's taught me, and it's in great part why I'm sharing with you, is he is in awe of humanity and their capacity to forgive. I am too. Also, here I am featured with Mr. Mark Heyer. I had the opportunity to meet him last weekend at a Worldwide Forgiveness Alliance event. His example for me was so profound because while it took me 2 decades to kind of figure out where I was in the whole forgiveness process, he came out to say he forgives the killers of his daughter. I don't know if you recall, but very recently, his daughter was killed by an individual driving a car. His daughter was protesting the protesters who were white supremacists. She was killed, and Mr. Heyer has taught me the most amazing lesson. He said, we're asked to do one thing in this world, we're asked to love one another. And then finally, here is another reason why forgiveness is worth its work. These are my children. And I am very fortunate to be a legacy of forgiveness. And I would like to pass that on to my kids. And I want them to learn it early. I want them to have a forgiveness mindset now, because I'm very convinced that as they go through their journeys, and each is going to have his or her own struggle, forgiveness is going to be a gift for them. They are going to have peace of mind more readily when they know it's an option to access. The one thing that changed everything. For me, how I came to understand that I would forever be different is meeting this man. My sister was murdered outside of Cape Town, South Africa. It was over 20 years ago now, and she was killed in a very tumultuous political time, and she was killed for the color of her skin. The man featured here, alongside my mom, is one of the men who was accountable for her death. I met him, and it was just a few years ago, and it was for the first time for me. And I am telling you that I consider it one of the bravest things that I've ever done. And what I experienced was nothing that I expected. I met with him, we had a glass of wine, and literally we sat and had a conversation about ourselves and about our families. I was able to look in his eyes, and I was able to see his humanity, and I was really able to see the commonalities that we had. And to leave that event, oh, well, you can see me here. I was happy. I was so happy to have experienced that experience. And I can tell you what that peace that has never left me feels like. It feels like a giant exhale and then a wave of calm mixed with a twinge of excitement and the desire to smile from ear to ear. And then there's a space that happens, and it can be filled with a purpose that's all your own. The hurt no longer has a grip on you, and you're free to move and to see way more beauty in life. So are you ready for that sort of peace? So you might be wondering, this is all great and fine, but how did you do it? So I will tell you a little bit about how I did it. First, I studied a lot, and it was sort of weird because I did find in my studies that while I knew nothing about forgiveness, my family was an example in several of the books that I read. And I practiced, and I practiced, and I practiced, and I devised some strategies. So I'm going to share with you today 3 of my starting strategies, and write them down if you think they might be helpful. So the first is the decision. Here's the thing. Before you start to forgive someone, you literally have to decide that you want to forgive them. And I know for many of you who've had some pretty significant wrongs done for you or to you, that's hard. And honestly, you may or may not be in the space where you're ready to forgive. And it's totally okay. And I just would reiterate that forgiveness isn't going to be super effective if you're not open. But what I'd also like to add there is you need to be willing to accept a gift when you forgive. Forgiveness is actually not something that you're giving to the other person necessarily. It's something that you're giving to yourself. Forgiveness work is completely about you. And then I would add, and I think many of you have probably gotten this message, and you would probably agree that it's probably best to start small. You know, it's best to look at some of those no's in your life that are a little more manageable. Like maybe today, some of you had computer problems like I did before coming onto my live webinar. You know, starting those little things that make you frustrated during your day, because then you're going to get the process down and it's going to be a lot easier. The next strategy that I recommend is the admission. And the admission is kind of a big deal because we all have lots of grudges. And we can acknowledge that, but then we have to admit that we're holding on to them. And the biggest part is we have to come to realize that they're not serving ourselves, right? So you might hold a grudge against someone that, I don't know, took your parking place, right? Well, that person is long gone and doing whatever with his or her day, but you're sitting there pissed. And your day is affected because you're upset. So you need to admit that that grudge that you're holding is not serving you. And then there's something else that sometimes we have to admit, and I found this super hard in going through forgiveness around my divorce, and that is sometimes we played a role in the process of this hurt, and sometimes we have to admit that. So that's why we start small, because sometimes, you know, admitting some of the bigger stuff is kind of hard. And then there's the practice. And I want to go into this a little bit in depth, but I'm going to try to be brief. So here's the thing, the practice. First off, I think you need to be prepared to take a daily and conscious action toward what you've chosen to forgive. You need to then imagine what the state of forgiveness looks like. And then you explore the factual detail of the wrong that's been done to you. And you can do that in several ways, by writing about it, or talking to someone you trust about it, or even visualizing. And then once you've sort of gotten through the factual part of what happened, you then go to more of the emotional part about it. And that is a hard part. And you can also approach that in writing or in speaking or in visualizing. But that is part of the process, probably the biggest part and the hardest part. And then you continue that work until you feel something shift inside of you, however small. And that requires being really conscious in your day. Like maybe you win a couple hours without having your mind preoccupied with the wrong that was done to you. You know what? That's something to celebrate. So you need to be very conscious of it. Note that progress and continue on till one day you don't wish ill on that person or on that thing. And then you start over with the next smallest thing. So a few things on how you should approach your forgiveness work. I think you need to be willing to be courageous. And I know that there are friends out there today that have gone through some major things, and I admire your courage, so I know you can be courageous. You need to be willing to be honest. That's hard and not fun, but I think you know that. You need to be willing to think generously. Just give that some thought. What would it look like if I were generous today? You need to be willing to stop wanting to be right. This one is the pits, because it's much easier to be right and to want validation. And then you need to know that while your struggles are definitely your own, none of us here is going to have the same life journey. You do need to know, though, that we're all in it together, and you're not alone in your pain. Again, start small. What challenges might you encounter in your forgiveness work? Well, sometimes it's hard to identify the things that are actually the source of your pain, especially if they've been around for a while. You might not even know you're behaving or acting in a particular way because something happened so long ago and it's impacted you so profoundly, you can't even see it. Big challenge is having to face and work through that pain. There really aren't many shortcuts unless you have an epiphany and forgiveness happens upon you, and that can happen, and congratulations. And then having the patience to know it's a process. We have to be patient in our forgiveness work. Again, accepting the role in your situation can be super difficult. But what are the outcomes? For me, these are mine, and I'd like you to think of a few that would be yours. Openness, excitement, strength, joy, a powerful legacy, love, trust. All right, so you might want to forgive, but you're not feeling motivated, and I totally get it. Let me talk about some motivators. The first is, this is what I did. You might do something different, but I read just a bunch of inspirational books, and I put a few down here with a shameless plug of my book, because I'm an average person. If I can do this, you can do this too. But the Book of Joy by the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu, it's actually written by Douglas Abrams. And it is the most beautiful conversation of two of the most joyous men on the planet. And if you ever want to just feel good, you just need to read that book. And The How of Happiness is also an excellent book to read. It's in the realm of positive psychology, and it's written by Sonia Lubomirsky, and it talks about different things that we can actually do that are scientifically proven to impact our happiness. Daring Greatly is just one book by Brene Brown, one of my favorite authors. She's a researcher on shame and vulnerability, and she has recently come out with a book called Braving the Wilderness. I highly recommend it. She's very honest and super authentic, and she's helped me tremendously. What other motivators can you use? Your friends. I could not be where I am today without my friends, and for those of my friends who are on this workshop, thank you. Your kids. Your kids are watching you, even when you don't think they are. Just remember that. Your legacy. How do you want to be remembered? And then if you're super desperate, and there's many occasions that I was super desperate in going through this process, I couldn't remember what it felt like to be kind. And I found online loving kindness meditations. They've been around forever. My favorite are on the UCLA Mindful Awareness Research Center website. And it literally walks you through imagining what it is to be kind. And you quite quickly actually, feel kindness. But I would like, and I ask you, why not be your own biggest motivator? Jack Kornfield says it beautifully. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is not complete. I'm telling you that you can do this. I know you can because I have done it. I totally believe in you. You have that power in you. Now, a lot of our problems are very significant. I know many of you have had some real serious violations. So what I've offered today is by no means an attempt to replace the importance of professional counseling. And then I just wanted to remind people that there are grief support groups out there that are really a healthy and helpful option when you're feeling like you're alone in your pain. And then remember, there are spiritual leaders that always have an open ear for you and your situation. And then I'm going to end it because I feel like this is another way that you can have an ongoing friend in forgiveness if you're not always on a workshop, someone who believes in you. I've developed a course. It's an 8-week digital course, and it's called Forgive It. And I called it Forgive It not because forgiveness is simple, but because rather than forget it, we can forgive it, and then we can experience a much more joyful future. So my course has a few sessions, 8 sessions, as I mentioned before, and it is an introduction. And then I go a little more in depth into my own forgiveness story. And I have a session on the burden of grudges, which to me is important. And I carry many of them every day. And then I talk about the state of forgiveness is beautiful. We go through the prickly process of forgiving, and then we do a little in-depth on uncovering pain. And then there's a session on actually doing the work. And finally, I talk about celebrating your progress and the things that I do to mark the success I've made in my forgiveness journey. My team has valued this at $297, and this is the first time I'm talking about this to anyone publicly. And so I want everyone here to have a chance to get it at a discounted value of $197. So if that's something that interests you and you want to grab it, I think in the next 12 hours you can do that if you'd like. And you'll get that discount plus what I'd like to do as I continue my work, and because I'm so interested in all of your stories, is I want to offer a free strategy session for anyone who gets it today. We can have a 30-minute conversation about sort of where you are in your forgiveness journey and any obstacles that might be in your way, and we can help kind of work together to devise a plan, and I can support you in any way that I can in that. So if that interests you as a next step to what you've heard here, please feel free to go to my website. It's atriumphantme.com. And if you go into the front/product section, pardon me, you can see the information as to how to purchase my Forgive It course. So I think that is it. I am so excited that you were here with me today. I hope everyone was able to watch this in its entirety. And I wish you the best in your forgiveness endeavors, and I hope to stay in touch. And yeah, we'll talk soon.